Welcome to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello and welcome back to The Kitchen Table. I'm your host, Alicia Brown, and I am so excited. I have Casey Berglund back on the show. It's her third time on the show. I would have her on like every week if I could. She is the best. She's been my mentor for a long time. I was a participant in her program, the Let Your Body Lead professional certification program. And it was sort of creepy. I was talking to Casey last week and I was like, you're in my head a lot. A lot of what we learned from that program, I just really feel like I embody more and more every day. And that word embody is a really specific word that I want to use right now because it seems like we can intellectually understand something, right? We can kind of meet a concept or an idea from like this heady place of like, oh, that makes sense. But really living it out in our day to day is actually a little bit different of an experience. It's like it becomes a part of our life, like breathing. Embodying something is different than just simply knowing something or knowing how something works. And something that I found was missing in my work with intuitive eating was it was missing this embodiment piece. We were understanding intuitive eating. We can understand it from an intellectual place, but I needed Casey to kind of guide me into listening to my body to get from an intellectual understanding of intuitive eating to an embodied understanding of intuitive eating. And guess what? I had to deeper understand myself in the process. And gosh, that gets vulnerable. Gosh, that's like, ooh, there's a lot of stuff when we sift through understanding ourselves that comes up. But Casey helps us do that in a very compassionate way that brings us back home to ourselves. And that's why I've brought her here on the show to help us really understand how to embody who we really want to be by strengthening our mind-body connection. Casey, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I love being here with you. Third time's a charm.
When Casey came into the show, she said that she was kind of embodying a very like hip hop, rappy, punchy energy. And so that's what she's bringing today on the show. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, totally. I found this playlist that's called Feeling Myself and I woke up today and I like put on this outfit. I'm wearing for those of you who are listening, I'm wearing like a velvet, I call it my magician jacket because it's kind of got a bit of a magician tail on the end. And there was something about putting this jacket on. It's like I got to embody a different persona by putting it on, which I think clothing can be used in that way in such a cool way. But then, yeah, I found this playlist called Feeling Myself, and I was just walking down the street, jamming to it. And that energy is being carried over into this podcast episode. So I hope it serves who it's meant to serve, the energy that we co-create here together.
One of the pillars of the program that I'm telling everyone about, it's called The Workshop. One of the pillars is authentic style, where we will dive into that kind of like, ooh, when I put on this, I'm feeling myself kind of vibe.
Yes.
But the pillar we're talking about today, mind-body harmony, harnessing in that mind-body connection. Can you just like describe to us, like, what is the mind-body connection? Why is that important? Why are we here talking about it?
Well, the mind-body just is. So whether you believe in a mind-body connection or not, it just is. You know, current research supports that it's not the mind and the body, it's the mind body. It's all one. It just is connected. I interviewed once a neuroscientist who we were chatting about like mind and body and this sort of connection. And I hope I get this right. He said something to me like, the mind or the brain without the body would have nothing to sense. And the body without the brain and nervous system would be a puddle on the floor. So it literally is this cohesive unit that is the mind body. And so it's important to really explore mind body connection because this is part of your wholeness and your integration. And when we think about wellness, integration is one of the most important parts, is helping people to feel whole instead of fragmented. So many of us I experience this, like the part of me that's a farm girl who grew up in the country and, had very like conservative roots. And the part of me now that lives in the city and maybe identifies with social action, different perspectives and views, my wellness depends on me loving up the country girl and the city girl and integrating them into one. So in a similar way, the mind-body connection is all about integration. And this is a really important part of wholeness and wellness. So, this is also why I am a huge fan of intuitive eating and helping people heal their relationship with their bodies and food, because in a diet culture mindset or experience, diet culture keeps us fragmented instead of whole and integrated. So the mind-body connection just is, and it's critical to, I think, like not just understand it, but experience it through various practices that connect you with your integrated wholeness.
So there's this idea of like fragmentedness of like kind of having these dissociated parts. And then there's a concept of feeling whole and complete. How would you relate those two ideas back to the mind-body connection? Is it like when we're feeling strengthened in our mind-body connection, we feel whole, and we feel like there's like dissonance, we kind of feel separated from the two? Can you unpack that a little bit further?
I think that definitely would be one way to look at it, is this word always messes with me a bit when I say it. Like the opposite of integration is disintegration, but I think the word disintegration we don't often apply to our being. But yeah, I would say that when we're not feeling whole, not feeling integrated, it can be easier to feel like there's a separation between the mind and the body. And some people might even say like, oh, I'm so in my head, I'm so like intellectualizing everything. And others might say like, oh, I feel really like grounded in my body. And what's true is that your mind and your brain is still working when you are grounded in your body and sensing what you sense. So yeah, I think there's like a big connection between the mind-body connection and that sense of wholeness.
You were a dietitian working with intuitive eating and mindfulness prior to what you do now, leading the Let Your Body Lead movement. Can you kind of relate to your past work and kind of helping people heal their relationships with food and body and kind of feeling that disconnection while they were like within diet culture?
Yeah, totally. So disconnection, here's what that looked like. I'm thinking of a particular client that I worked with who is, I was going to say was, but is a brilliant young, like in her 20s, girl who, when I worked with her, she was in university at the time studying physics and is now going on to do like her master's and PhD in physics and just is a brilliant human, right? And she is someone who also had celiac disease. So there's that kind of chronic illness as part of, what she presented with. And when I first met her, she was someone who really just felt like she needed to cut almost everything out of her diet. And I think this is a completely normal response, especially when you're first diagnosed with something like celiac disease, where you absolutely do have to, remove the gluten from the diet. But there can be like other symptoms that still present even when the gluten is removed. So when she came to work with me, she was someone who was like, I need to follow a gluten-free diet, but I also need to be dairy-free, sugar-free, basically everything free. And she was disconnected in her mind body because she was outsourcing her power to external wisdom that was rooted in diet culture about what she needed to do. Mm-hmm. And in that, when she would come into a session, the disconnection would present as what I would call now like a hyper aroused nervous system, fight, flight sort of response, anxiety. You could tell that there was like a bit of nervousness coming into the session, that it was hard to find that centeredness, that calmness. And I think sometimes with diet culture, the idea that we need to like cut different things out of our diet can be really connected with a sense of anxiety and fear around food.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it also prevented her from kind of tapping into the wisdom of her body or being grounded in her body while still like, having her mind or her brain on board. And so as we worked together, part of what I did as a dietitian was started each nutritional counseling session with a meditation or an embodiment practice where I would guide her into like using her breath, into observing her body, into feeling sensations in her body. And a lot of her sensations were gastrointestinal, which is the reason why she was cutting out the gluten, the sugar, the dairy, the everything. And as we worked toward her becoming more acquainted with her body through feeling the sensations in that area that were uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So think about common sensations like gas, bloating, distension of the belly. Like she would tune into it and I would guide her to be with those uncomfortable sensations rather than kind of try and fix them right away. And what she started to realize over time, that the sensations were communicating something different to her. Like she started to realize as she connected with her body that the sensations she was feeling were actually not connected to food. She'd already cut the gluten out of her diet. And so her celiac disease was well managed, but her awareness of her inner self brought forth this wisdom about a relationship in her life and stressors that she was feeling as it related to school and being in a highly competitive program. And this isn't something that I projected onto her. It was something that came from within. So what I started to notice through our work together, every single session we worked together for, I think, 6 months, is that through connecting her with her body and physical sensations that she thought were related to food, she actually just became more connected into feeling sensations that weren't just fleeting thoughts. Thoughts can be considered sensation, but our bodies feel expansion, contraction, openness, like that feeling of like a gas bubble in your intestine or pain. It's like connecting with those actual sensations and slowing everything down helped her to find a deeper truth. And in those moments, I was witness to mind-body integration. So instead of discounting body wisdom or not tuning into the body and thinking her way through what she thought she needed to do, which was rooted in diet culture's messaging, she was able to connect with a truth and build a stronger kind of bridge, mind-body bridge, that guided her to not just less symptoms. Like her bloating, gas, distension didn't completely go away because she still would have cross-contamination with gluten every once in a while, but they dramatically decreased. And she would come into our sessions with less of that fight, flight, anxious response, which shows up in the body, right? Like I could see her face being flushed or her even like feeling a bit shaky. Mm-hmm. And she would come in just like embodying grace and confidence. And this was one of my most fulfilling clients because she was like young and dating for the first time and exploring like what she thought about issues. And she was like a woman in a male-dominated profession. And so to connect her with her center also connected her with confidence. The mind-body integration offers confidence. It offers this capacity to know what's true, but then also to be brave and maybe speak what's true and to stand up for yourself and to say no to the abusive relationship, And so witnessing this transformational journey with her was just so beautiful. And I think that's a great example of how mind-body connection, starting with how you relate with food and your body or body image, can actually go so much deeper that impacts life on a whole other level. So I can't even remember at this point what your original question was, but I hope that offered up some insight or an example that ties right back in.
It does. I want to jump back into the piece where this client that you were working with, and thank you so much for sharing that client scenario, because I think that's a lot of us that are fearing food. when we feel quite disconnected to maybe the sensations in the body, it might be because they're uncomfortable, right? We never think of like exploring these uncomfortable sensations. We kind of just want to fix it. And in order to fix it, we pop back up to the mind. We kind of like, okay, understand the sensation is happening in the body. We pop back up to the mind and say, what can we do to fix it? Oftentimes that's where, like you said, the diet culture mantra resides. And so it's like, I'm going to cut out these foods to eliminate the discomfort. But what this client found, or what you found with this client in her experience, was that the discomfort actually wasn't rooted in her food choices. It was rooted in other stuff in her life. Did you find that often to be the case? Like once you address that discomfort, that it oftentimes wasn't about the food?
Totally. I would say 95% of the time.
I find that
Think
too.
about chronic dieters who have been victim to diet culture for their whole lives. Like often a big struggle is like evening eating or binge cycles, let's say. And the number of people I worked with who would beat themselves up for like eating at night, and I think about in university, we would come up with all of these strategies about how to make that like a little bit better, right? Like, oh, just switch out the chips for carrot sticks or have them pre-cut in the fridge so they're readily available. It's kind of like, okay, there's a fun little Band-Aid solution that's not actually solving the problem, And so in those cases, because food serves so many beautiful purposes, truly, it's like really helpful for regulating the nervous system when you're stressed.
Yes.
It's really helpful for building connection. It's really helpful to help you avoid uncomfortable sensations in the body, right? It serves a lot of purposes. And I genuinely mean that with an objective voice. And it isn't until there's like a little bit of that digging deeper that it's illuminated that like, this isn't really about food. Mm-hmm. And I guess, my journey has been guiding people beyond the realm of food and nutrition for this very reason. It's like connecting with your body isn't just here to help you eat and move and sleep in an aligned way. It's here to help you live in an aligned way. It's here to help you set boundaries. It's here to help you access your deepest purpose, your highest potential, to contribute in the world in a way that is big and vibrant. So I think that there's typically something underneath the food stuff. Not always. Sometimes food is just food, but typically there's something underneath the food stuff that is worth getting to the truth of, so that people can be in the world in a way that is in alignment with them. Mm-hmm.
It's oftentimes that we get caught up in diet culture that it's driven by anxiety and fear. And that oftentimes shows up in the body in the ways that you previously described. But it's hard to want to like connect with the body when it's feeling all these uncomfortable sensations.
Yeah.
How do you think of guiding, like in any situation where we're feeling this discomfort, how can we connect with that in a way that's serving? Because sometimes that feels like something that we'd rather, avoid, either using food or using other coping mechanisms. We try to avoid these uncomfortable feelings. And we let that in some way just kind of be masked by our circulating anxiety in the mind. And I feel those two things are connected. Like some feeling is being suppressed and we're feeling some anxiety. And so how can we kind of connect with ourselves in a way that's serving to us to try to mend the fear and anxiety that we are experiencing in our bodies, either due to food or due to other things in life?
Yeah. That's really hard sometimes.
It's really hard sometimes.
It's really hard sometimes, especially it's really hard to, at the same time, learn how to work with the body and fight the body. And so, a lot of times when I was caught in a dieting cycle, when I struggled with disordered eating, I didn't like my body. I wanted my body to change. So from that perspective, it's almost impossible to then feel safe enough to actually drop into my body and feel the sensations and trust myself enough to listen to that wisdom and do something about it. And so I really think that embodiment is an advanced practice because there has to be at least a willingness to let go of trying to change your body first. Because if you're constantly trying to change your body, you're not accepting it as it is. And if you're not accepting it as it is, you're not going to trust what you find when you drop into those sensations. And so often embodiment work comes after someone's hit diet rock bottom and they're like, I'm not going to diet again because this doesn't work. It hasn't served me my whole life.
Right.
Where like people like you, Alicia, come in, it's like people need to be at a certain point in their journey to receive benefit from your guidance and to be open to a deeper level of self-awareness by way of embodiment. You know, even when we talk about body image is still and working on your body image, that's still dissociative. Body image is about how do you look from the outside. It's not about how do you feel from the inside. And so sometimes we need to work on body image first before we're willing to kind of get a little closer inside of ourselves, you know? So, you asked, like, how do we get started when it's so hard? And I guess first I want to validate that it is so hard.
Yeah.
And for you who is listening, who's maybe caught up in the diet cycle, like, has it worked for you? And are you willing to let it go for even just a small period of time and try something different that involves a kinder, more compassionate approach with the body to move forward in the direction that you probably really want? So I think prerequisites are a willingness to stop trying so hard to change your body and a compassion to start treating yourself and your body like you would a close friend or a child. Without compassion, it's hard to explore body wisdom without judging it and then hopping right back into the head and getting all caught up in the mind spirals. How much sense does that make? What parts might you pull out of there that's helpful for your people?
It's so beautifully put. I also find like finding any sort of body acceptance is very difficult without having compassion as well. Compassion is often like the gateway to the acceptance, but almost like the openness to having our body be okay right now as is the gateway to the compassion, is the gateway to the acceptance. So it's so wise to say this kind of happens in states, and we have to kind of continually be aware of ourselves and how receptive we are, because we can't lie ourselves into body acceptance, right? It's not like a fake it till you make it kind of scenario. Embodiment is a true belief in understanding ourselves that way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. And I'm also feeling called to share one more piece.
Please.
And that is, and I know this can be an edgy topic, and I don't necessarily think that it should be, but it's the role of spirituality on any transformational journey, including one where you're wanting to build a different relationship with your body. And what I mean by this, and when I say spirituality, I mean like whatever you connect with, whether that's nature or a religious practice or the universe or source or higher consciousness. Without spirituality, it can sometimes be hard to move through the rock bottom moments, like move through the really hard stuff. And I guess I want to offer up, considering that body acceptance when you've been stuck in diet culture is really hard, and considering compassion or treating yourself like you would a close friend is really hard when your mind's used to like beating yourself up. In these moments in my life, when I'm in a rock bottom, I throw my hands in the air and I'm like, I surrender. Universe, like, show me the way. And I want to put that on the table because sometimes we think of spirituality as an ungrounded concept. And yet a spiritual connection can literally guide you through the hardest thing to get you started on a path toward growth and healing. Like, I think about the people that have been attracted into Worthy and Well's community, including you know, those who are in the professional certification. I attract people who are at least spiritually curious. And that, to me, I feel is important. Like, I could talk about embodiment from a purely like scientific perspective. I could talk about the nervous system and polyvagal theory and like the research around like how mindfulness flipped on itself is embodiment. And just like teaching yoga in Western culture as exercise is watering down the ancient wisdom of the practice, I believe that teaching embodiment or a journey toward healing without spirituality is cutting you off from a whole other source of support and wisdom on the journey. We talked about integration and wholeness. Spirituality and science can work hand in hand. They are all one. Yes. The mind and the body are all one. So why not tap into the resources that are available to you to help guide you through the shit that's really hard in life, including going from disembodiment, maybe even hating your body, toward body neutrality, body acceptance, perhaps even like full embodiment, love of the body. You know, so many people talk about like body neutrality, like that is amazing. Mm-hmm. I'm here to raise the bar. What if, especially women and others who are conditioned to fight their bodies, I'm thinking about trans people in the LGBTQIA community, people of various races who've been marginalized over time, we're all like taught to hate our bodies. And capitalism like makes money on us hating our bodies. What if we didn't just feel neutral about our bodies, but we actually fucking loved our bodies? Like, what if we woke up and put on a magician coat and skipped down the street listening to hip hop and like brought our full vibe to the table? That only makes the world more expansive and more loving and more compassionate. And I guess I want to invite your viewers to like be where you are on the journey and know that you deserve body love, body adoration, body radiance, body expression, life expression. Like, why not go bigger? You got me riled up, Alicia. I'm on a rant now.
I'm loving it so much. Oftentimes we're so stuck in how much it sucks and how hard it is to feel that body hatred. But you've just opened up the door so wide for what could be possible in our lives. And what if that was possible to really love our bodies? That might seem like, wow, so far out there for a lot of us that felt like it was just hard to get dressed this morning. But yes, it can be possible.
Mm-hmm. And I think there are people who do.
And
like, find your people.
Movers. Yeah.
Find your people. Like yes. Alicia's community, you're going to celebrate people's bodies like to the max.
We do.
You know, no tolerance for diet culture in this. You know, yes,
exactly.
We'll meet you where you are and help you heal. My community, like we're all about celebrating, bragging. That's not conceited. That's not selfish. That's like your birthright to be a radiant being, an expansive being.
I think it takes what you talked about of connecting. I think the spirituality component is so huge. I'm glad that you brought that today, because I think that's really important. When we don't trust ourselves enough, we have to trust in something bigger than ourselves to pull us out of the stuck. And I think that feels so true. And when we couple that with an openness and willingness to do the introspection necessary to connect with ourselves in any small way and let that grow, we further strengthen that mind-body connection that carries us through beyond what any intellectual understanding could bring us.
Oh, amen.
I made this program, the workshop that I've talked with you all about. Oh, spoiler, Casey's part of the program. Casey's so coming excited. In. She's doing a workshop on how to listen to the body, this like mind-body connection. And oftentimes there's like this total block into like listening to the body. With intuitive eating, we talk about hunger and fullness and satisfaction and all of what that means. But sometimes it's hard to even like tap into the body to see, what does that even feel like? What is that experience of hunger? Can we rate it? Can we talk about it? We have to find, like you said, Casey, like that safety and being able to drop into the body, to do some detection, to do some working to see, what does it feel like to be subtly hungry, subtly full? The nuanced feelings that come with some of these bodily emotions. we can talk about this from an intellectual place, but actually what we're really missing is really going into the embodiment piece necessary to understand intuitive eating beyond an intellectual understanding, get into embodied understanding of intuitive eating. So the way I fashioned this program that, Casey, I'm so glad you're a part of it. I fashioned this program to actually kind of lead us into strengthening that connection layer by layer. So for the first 2 months of the program, we'll be talking about embodied or intuitive eating, and then climbing into that mind-body connection. I'm calling it mind-body harmony after those 2 months. Do you think, Casey, it'll be advantageous for us to kind of talk about intuitive eating from this like intellectual space, but have this embodied piece be a bridge into talking about greater healing through mind and body in other ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what you said, how intuitive eating is often taught in an intellectual way. Like there's principles that we think about and we contemplate, and that type of reflection is so beautiful and so important.
Yes.
And at some point, we need to take it deeper. So my role in your program, which I'm so happy to be a guest in, is like those of you who join, and for those of you who don't join and are listening are kind of like, oh, but like, what does that even mean? It really means like us not just talking about you listening to your body, but you being guided into your body in a systematic way. And in a simple way that you can practice literally every single day. And that practice is so, so important. When we have daily practices that are little, and maybe they're not daily, maybe they're every other day or weekly when we start, but when we have practices of dropping, and it's like I sort of hear voices in my head of like objections that come up as I'm talking, but I'm thinking about like, when you can learn how to connect with the body, kind of like learning how to meditate, learning how to systematically explore sensation in the body, we take things a level deeper. And especially when you have a guide, when you're first learning, to take you into your body and ask you thoughtful questions from that place that help you access the unique way that your body speaks, the unique messages that your sensations have for you, the unique way in which you can access intuitive knowings. Like this process isn't just about like rating your hunger and fullness. It's like that could be a gateway, but what does that feel like? Can we go into feeling it right now? And I think where people get tripped up on that journey is not having the language. Like our culture kind of says, if you can't prove it, like the scientific method says, if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. And in a similar way, sometimes we think if we can't articulate it, it's not real. But this is where it gets hard, because body wisdom is sometimes hard to articulate. And I guess it's my job to help you articulate it so that you can validate it. And it's also my job to help you trust it even when you can't articulate it, and feel it as valid from your own source of validation, so that you can trust it as you move forward. And we kind of build this little loop where you learn how to trust your body, you act upon that wisdom, it works out for you. There's like evidence and confidence that's built. We do it again and again and again. We do it for small things, like I often use the example of what kind of ice cream you want. And then we build into like, ooh, what does my body want at this restaurant for dinner? To like, ooh, do I want to go on a date with this person again or not? To like, am I willing to say yes to this meeting? Like, what is my body saying? Do I want to live in the country still? Is this job still the right fit for me? It's like your body holds wisdom about all of that. And there's a way through having a very present guide taking you into feeling your body rather than just thinking about what you're feeling. That brings everything to a deeper level when it comes to intuitive eating, but also when it comes to intuitive living, intuitive style. Hey, body, how do you want to adorn yourself today?
Yes.
I love that you have that style part to your program, because that's fun. It's not vain. It's not superficial. It's like you as a radiant being deserve to feel awesome in how you adorn this vessel that carries your soul around. It's a sacred act.
You mentioned like strengthening that mind body connection carries with it a confidence, because there's like this true undeniable knowing that comes from that. Like when you choose your favorite ice cream that you want in that moment, it's just like, oh my gosh, mint chip. And I mean, everything else is just okay, but mint chip was the one in the moment, right? And it's just like that same knowing of like how to dress ourselves, how to cook for ourselves. It's like this can be an intuitive practice, and it can be a very embodied practice too. We can just increase our consciousness and our connection, our mind body connection, to really understand what body wisdom we have inside of us to guide our actions through these things. And I think it comes from, like you said, that little small instances of building trust with the body and understanding the body is safe, the body can be trusted. And when we trust that, we're rewarded. And that's why I am so excited with, the intellectual of intuitive eating being first, and then having this bridge of strengthening that mind body connection in the third month of this program that will launch us into conversations of how to cook, how to adorn ourselves, as you said, and how to live, like this intuitive living piece of making the bigger decisions in life and understanding ourselves more, of like that contraction, that expansion, as you always talk about, really important. And understanding how we're kind of moving about in life, or even just knowing the times when we're anxious and stressed, and being able to just validate that that's happening as well, and being able to say, oh, this is what I need to do to ground myself in this moment, to feel like I'm a cohesive whole human being. Wow, does that just give me confidence to think about? That's what brings me here today with you. You exude confidence, Casey, by your strengthened mind-body connection and this total knowing of yourself. I want to reflect that back to you, because it's so amazing to witness. And yeah, you're right. As we build a community around ourselves with women who are trying, of all people, that are trying to really get to know themselves in this deeper way, we all can show up more confident, more whole, and we can learn how to move about in the world in a more authentic, purpose-driven, and genuine way.
Right.
And so I'm just on fire for that concept. As we wrap up our episode today, is there anything that's kind of coming to your mind to talk about as far as like mind-body connection, or maybe something that everyone can do to like start today to kind of think about how they might go about building awareness around that connection?
Just building off of kind of what you just had spoken about earlier, it's like this confidence and connection helps us act from our essence rather than our wounds. And that builds more acceptance, compassion, and love in the world. And so I just want to like finish that statement. Like that really changes the world. I know we talked about that in our second episode, right?
Yes.
It's like, if we could act from our essence rather than our wound, from love rather than fear, from the truth rather than the hurt, we all expand. And so your actual question was like about like, how can we start today paying attention to the body? I would say take a moment right when you get up or right before you go to bed to take 3 deep breaths and to feel the expansion on the inhale and the contraction on the exhale. And if you want to take it a bit deeper, notice where your awareness naturally goes after you take 3 deep breaths. If your awareness is like back up in the head, and without judgment, right? Compassion. It's like, oh, interesting, cool, okay. I'm back into thinking. Let me take 3 more deep breaths. Our breath can often be a really beautiful gateway into the present moment, and the present moment can be like a gateway into feeling what is in the body moment to moment.
Thank you so much for that, Casey. That's a great place to start. Deep breaths and really thinking about just being in the present moment with an element of curiosity, not judgment. Thank you so much for all of your sharing on the show today. As usual, I'm going to link to our former episodes because people are wanting more already. Like right now, they're like, we want more Casey. So what I will do, oh, you have 3 options. You could join the workshop. Yes, you'll get a free one-on-one with me if you join the workshop before June 20th. It's a 6-month program. Embodied eating, mind-body harmony, conscious cooking, authentic style, and intuitive living. These are the primary pillars of the program. Community support, built-in one-on-ones, everyday tips and insights and tricks to guide you back into your body, as Casey is talking about, weekly homework, monthly workshops. You're going to want to be a part of this. Oh, and did I mention that there is a workout program that's like truly anti-diet and helping like you let your body lead within the program as well? Oh, did I mention that George is coming in to do a breathwork session?
Oh,
so good.
We love
I'm just
him.
being a little bit taken back. I'm so
You know
excited.
what? Also, I feel like I want to offer your people in that group.
Yes.
Like we should maybe talk after the episode about kind of a special access to like my clarity of purpose workshops, like maybe for your group.
Oh.
I know we're recording and this is maybe an after conversation, but I just keep getting the hit that, you know, once people go through your program, they're going to want to know like, what the hell am I here for on the planet? Now that dieting isn't sucking my life dry. And now that I'm looking hot with my style and I know how to cook and I have my basic needs met, what is my dharma? What am I here for?
That's what I'm talking about.
Maybe we can talk about like your people getting a special opportunity to do like a clarity of purpose workshop after all this thing.
What a gift.
I feel like we just said it on the podcast, so we might need to make it real.
What a gift.
It just gets juicier, Alicia.
That even gets juicier. What an offering it is. Could I just say on the show, working with Casey has literally changed my life. I couldn't recommend you enough, Casey, to everybody. That would be a perfect way to even go deeper after the workshop.
Oh, there's always more.
Purpose and yes, there is always more, and this program is covering a bunch, and that would be such an amazing offering. So we will chat about that after the workshop. Oh, the gifts keep on giving. And so that's one way to listen to Casey, and I will link to our other episodes in the bottom of the show notes as well. If you just want to listen to more episodes, I've got 2 other bomb episodes with Casey that I've listened to multiple times. So highly recommend. Thank you everyone for listening to the show today. Thank you so much. If this meant anything to you in your life right now, if this hit you in any way, send this to a friend. Tell them to give it a listen. And while you have your phone out, hit subscribe. Ta-da! You will never miss an episode every Monday and Thursday here at the kitchen table if you hit that subscribe button. Next Monday, we will be talking about conscious cooking on the episode, so I cannot wait for you to join me in that conversation. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you on Monday. Have a great day and a great weekend. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Bye, Alicia.
Bye, Casey. Thank you.